Hey everybody, this is me, the Undead Viking. I'm here behind the DM's screen, and I'm here to tell you another tale. Now, it is Friday, and I did a while ago promise that I was going to try to do 2 of these a week, and so I had one on Monday, and now I have one here. It's kind of like, maybe I'll just do that. Like, maybe I can get one done, release it on Monday, and then I have the rest of the week to kind of figure out my Friday one. And regardless, I know I did miss... I didn't get 2 done like a week or 2 ago, so maybe I owe you guys 3 like next week or something. I'll think of something. But regardless, today's episode revolves around a couple of things. It revolves around a recent D&D session that I ran, and just something that came up in my thoughts while I was playing it. And also, it runs this book that I got for my daughter, now that she runs her own D&D games. And I got her this, and it is called The Monsters Know What They're Doing. And it's based on the author, Keith Amon. I apologize if I don't do it. He has a D&D blog, which has the exact same name, The Monsters Know What They're Doing. And I'm not here really to review this book, but I'm here to give my thoughts on this book, and also kind of my thoughts on how I run my encounters, and mostly combats, but obviously encounters don't have to be combats. So this is how I run encounters with NPC monsters or NPC adventuring bands or NPC merchants or whatever that undoubtedly will result in combat. And it also, this is like kind of, this is a long preamble and I apologize for that, but it also feeds into the way that I run my sessions, the way I run my campaigns. All right, so when I started DMing, as with a lot of people, you probably, well, I shouldn't say a lot of people. When I started DMing back in the 70s and the 80s, most of the adventures that you picked up, they would have this little boxed text, and that was meant to be read aloud to the players. Like, you just sat there and you read it out loud and you told the players whatever. Now, those have been abandoned for the most part, and I kind of miss them in a way, but I also don't miss them in a way. When you have that box text, it literally does put you in a box. It says, this is what the room is, this is what those creatures are doing, this is what it looks like, and there's no realm of alteration for that, right? So now what most... and I think this is a product of a couple of different things. So now what most store-bought campaigns, adventures, or what have you, they give you a big long box of or a big long story about the room or the cavern or the mansion or whatever, and they rely on the GM to read that and kind of just come up with and be very familiar with it. And then depending upon when the players show up and what they see, and depending upon the lighting the PCs have, whether or not they're injured, whether or not they're running, all these different things, they will interpret the world or that area depending upon the dynamic situation of what the players are going through at that time. And that's a better way, right, technically, but I also think it's a little bit lazy now with the things that are being created, because writing a box of text and describing exactly what the DM is supposed to say or the GM is supposed to say is tough, right? And it is something that actually takes a little bit more writing and what have you. So I think it's a combination of one, we've just kind of moved on to an era where we're not spoon feeding are people that are running the games, but also I think it's something where people are just kind of sliding into the idea of, well, this just is kind of easier, and we don't want to bother with that. But it doesn't matter. The point is that I started out playing that with those boxes, and that's what I did. But as time went on, and there wasn't enough modules coming out, because now, of course, in the RPG world with Kickstarter and with online resources and PDFs and everything, the world is your oyster right now. But back when I was a kid, and I was running these things, as I said, in the 70s and the 80s, like, you couldn't, after a while, you bought everything. There wasn't anything left to buy. You had to wait for TSR to release more stuff. And so in the meantime, what you did is you created your own. And I had a few friends, and I know that because I saw their adventure notes after the fact. They actually did write out. They actually drew boxes on their notebooks, and they wrote out exactly what they wanted to say, and then they used that stuff. But I remember myself, when I ran campaigns, I would just, mine would be like, I'd have a map, and I'd have room 1, and then one of my notes would be 4 hobgoblins, hit points 9, 7, 6, 8, and they have 50 gold pieces. And I would that's all I'd have written in there. That's just the way I did it. And then I did that for years. And then what I did was I slowly started transposing over to the world of just basically one-page dungeons. And in a lot of ways, and I apologize for the cat. I have a very angry cat. I think she wants food or something. But one-page dungeons basically, and there are technically one-page dungeon. If you Google that, you can find there's some excellent books out there, and I think the one-page dungeon books are great stuff. Just for reading and for being able to just steal ideas. So check that stuff out. But anyway, for me, it's basically a piece of yellow legal pad paper that I write everything that is in there. Maybe I scribble a little sample map. And I then just kind of say, this is the stuff that's in there. This is the stuff that, important treasure, like, if there's a magical sword or an amulet or something that's significant that's in there. And then the monsters that are going to be in there and anything that's significant as far as an NPC. And very little of that is stat boxed out. I've played the game long enough that, like, I know levels of what you're running into. Sometimes if a monster has like a special attack that I want to make sure I remember, I'll like write down, oh, this thing has a poison and the save is this, or this undead has life drain, and then the save DC for that, and things like that. If there's a spellcaster, I kind of cheat a lot, and this is one of the things you're going to learn here, is I kind of cheat a lot when it comes to a spellcaster, where I just kind of, like, they have the spells they should have, right? They're ready for the players. I don't have a situation where it's like, oh, too bad he decided to memorize knock today instead of web. No, heck with that. That's just not a situation that I put myself into. I don't want the goblin wizard to be a chump, right? I want him to be challenging, and I think that kind of segues very well into where I'm getting with this. Is that when I run my my combats, I want them to be challenging, and I have them be challenging dependent upon where the players are at, and sometimes I'll vary that a little bit as far as up or down, and to be truthful. Not that I haven't been truthful before, but to be truthful, this is to the players that watch this, that play in my campaigns. I have had to do more prep since the pandemic than I ever have in years, because of the fact that I have to actually place this stuff onto Roll20, which we use to play our games, and I have to actually create that stuff and have it prepared and have it ready to go. And the situation there is that I had to have a map ready. In a lot of cases, when I have run my games, is that I just don't have a map. I literally don't have a map. I have some scribbled rooms that they're at, but I what we play is we actually have one of those like Chessex game mats, and then we actually have, when we played in person, and then we have a glass sheet that goes over it, so we can take dry erase markers and just draw on the glass sheet. And of course, like, you can just make whatever you want, and then the players can move their miniatures around and what have you, and then you just erase it, and then you move on to the next thing. So so in a lot of cases, like, I will just either A, come up with a map on the fly, or B, like, since there's like 1,000 resources online now, another thing that's great about playing now is that you can just type in Ruined Monastery D&D map and hit enter, go to image search, and boom, there's 1,000 ideas for you. What do you want? You want this one? You want that one? You want this one? You want to combine these two? And then you can just create whatever you want off of that. But anyway, I'm kind of getting ahead of or getting behind myself, or whatever you want to say. So my point is that I'm coming back to here. How do I make my encounters? So the biggest thing about making the encounters for me is that, as I said, they want to be challenging, and the dungeons have to scale, right? You don't want your 6th level party members entering into a kobold cavern and just like mopping up the floor with these kobolds. I mean, that's not fun for you as the GM running the game, and it isn't fun for the players either. I once did a campaign where there was like a mine, like a goblin mine that they found, and there was, of course, the elevator going up and down. And the thing is that I actually let the players decide what level they wanted to go to. You know, it's like, and there is like this whole thing: the deeper you go, the more challenging things become. And this was the case in this particular goblin mine. Just, it's a trope or whatever, but you don't put a dragon in the first room of the dungeon. So the players could go to the first level, the second level, third level, fourth level. And the thing is that and I purposely decided, like, the first level was going to be very, very easy. Very, very simple. Like literally they were going to, like, because I remember I had some of the players that were complaining about, oh, these things are too tough, and this isn't me trying to be mean or anything like that, but I was like, all right, fine. You don't like the challenge of what you're dealing with right now, then, maybe we'll change this up, or we'll alter this a little bit. And so they entered the first room, and there was just a bunch of goblins there, goblin miners, and the goblins, like, grabbed their pickaxes, and they attacked, and, I mean, this is a party of, like, 5th level adventurers, and they just wiped the floor with them. I mean, I think the magic user, the wizard, even used, like, a fireball, and then boom, they all died, right? And then, like, the explosion of the fireball, a bunch more goblins showed up, and I mean, these guys had to roll 19s or 20s to be able to hit the frontline fighters. Maybe somebody took like 6 points of damage, but they literally, like, for like a half an hour, they were just hacking these goblins to death. And they were just like, wow, this is really easy. And they're like, let's just go to the next room. And they went to the next room, and there the goblins were hiding, and then they made short work of them, and then they went to the next room, and they were just like, wow, this is dull. And the players are like, yeah, whatever, and it's just like, and of course, like, the goblins had very little treasure, so they're like, oh, what do we find? Oh, you find, and then, like, this is another thing. I don't, like, specifically write down treasure. I, like, just roll. It's like, oh, grab, like, 3 20-sideds, roll them. Oh, you found, 42 copper pieces. And they're like, great, we got 42 pennies. Why are we even here? And then they were sitting there going through the whole first level of the mines. And then finally, somebody's like, let's just go to a lower level. This is boring. And the thing was, it was like, and I was like, oh, okay. And so they went to the next level, and it was hobgoblins, because it was just another thing. And then, so then they're like, and then they went through like two rooms of the hobgoblins, and they're like, this is boring too, because they were just, once again, they were wiping the floor with them. And I remember we got through the whole session, and I remember I said, remember when you were saying that, like, you thought the combats were too challenging. So here was a situation where you had the option. So, like, at the 4th level of the dungeon, it was like there was a lot tougher stuff there. That's where, like, the leaders of the clan were, and they had summoned demons and things like that. And so it was actually challenging. And I said, you were there saying that you weren't having any fun because you said my combats were too tough. And, like, when they were too easy, you didn't like them anymore. I was like, and then when did you start getting excited? And I was like, you started getting excited when the combats were tough and things were hitting you, and you were like, and the clerics racing back and forth and healing this person and healing that person, and the wizards like counterspelling the things that the necromancer's casting and things like that, right? And like then you were having fun. Your eyes were alive. You were excited. You were having a great time. Somebody actually got knocked down in combat, and everybody's like, "Oh, geez, we gotta save that guy," you know. And I was like, so don't tell me that you want things to be easier when they are, and you're like, eh. And you're just like, and everybody's just staring at their phone and looking around and talking about a movie they just watched, and as soon as things were tough, as soon as something ran up and just smacked that paladin in the face, they were like, holy cow, what's going on? And they got excited. So, you know, I mean, and that's just my group, right? I'm not telling you that's how your group is, but you talk to them, listen to what they're saying, but also realize that there's a very, very real chance that what your players are saying they want, they don't really mean what they want, because they can't put into words exactly what they want, if that makes sense. Like they want a certain level of excitement and trepidation and challenge, but it's like there's a very, very fine line there where you have to meet it, and sometimes like a good DM will go past that line and really challenge their players and make them realize that no, I want things to be tough and difficult. And I'm a firm believer in, like, if you are living in a fantasy D&D world where you are fighting goblins, like, if you didn't fight those goblins and kill them, they would kill you and eat you. So that is a combat that it means life or death to those goblins and to the PCs. And if that was a common occurrence in your life, like if you go off and travel through the forest, there's a good chance a giant spider is going to try to eat you, then I think you have to like recognize that, and I think the players also have to recognize that that is a very, very real thing, and that death can loom around the corner. So all that being said, what does that have to do with this book? And that's a long story, but I mean, what does that have to do with this book, and what does it have to do with how I run my combats? So I got this book for my daughter. I was super excited, and as soon as she got it, like I gave it to her, and it was a Christmas gift. And I took it aside, and I actually kind of read through it, and I thought this was a cool book. I mean, it was a really cool book that I was going to use almost zero information from it. Now, that is not to say that you wouldn't get a ton of stuff from this, and I think this has helped my daughter play a lot. But what I thought it was going to be was how to make fun, dynamic, interesting encounters. That's what I thought it was going to be about. And what this book is, it is a very, very technical. This particular monster has a X percentage chance to hit a person that has this armor class, and that's how it is. This particular monster is able to cast these spells that have this tough of a saving throw, and then your players have an X percentage amount of, and so if a combat lasts 6 rounds, they average out the damage of that combat will be this, and I'm like, I'm out. I'm completely out of that conversation. I don't want my combats and my whole campaign to be based upon a mathematical equation. I firmly believe that after 4 decades of running D&D games, I have a good feel for how difficult a combat is and how difficult it should be, and how I can vary that up or down from that level depending upon what kind of mood I want to have at that table with the players playing. So yes, I think this is a good book. I think there's new DMs can get a ton out of this, but I also think that as you grow as a dungeon master, you'll take this book and you'll toss it to the side, because you will learn just how to react to the feel at the table. You'll learn to react to how the players are responding to the combat, whether they're engaged, whether they're absent, whether they are excited, and what have you. You'll be able to catch on to where they're going and what's going on. So all that being said, how I run my encounters. For starters, I come up with the idea of the monster, and remember, I don't believe in saying this is a goblin, this is a troll, this is a ghoul, this is a wight. I don't believe in doing that. I just describe to the players what they see, and I also don't make it look like what they're expecting to see. A troll isn't a big giant green monster with claws and a big nose and sharp teeth who has like thin spindly arms. No, a troll can be any color for me. A purplish green mutated creature with big giant blazing red eyes and like, big, who's just like this stocky like thumping around creature that like, and yeah, he regenerates, but like the reason why like the regeneration occurs isn't because his arms regrow. It's like he's just so big and fat that when you're like puncturing his skin, like no blood's coming out. You don't even know if you're doing damage. It's still regeneration. It just isn't classic troll regeneration. I switch things up and I make my players like wonder what is this thing that we're fighting. They still have the exact same stats as a troll. It just doesn't look like a troll. Same thing for like undead. I mean, yeah, you can't really do much with skeletons and zombies. Those are just look like they do. But there's so many different types of undead that like you don't have to make a vampire look like every single vampire. You don't have to make a ghoul look like every single other ghoul. You can just mess with that stuff. I had a campaign where ghouls actually like they had like tentacles for arms instead, like that were actually they looked like intestines and things like that. Just twist things up, make them different, and make the players wonder what the heck they're dealing with, and you're going to have a lot of fun with that stuff. So that's first things first. I don't create standard monsters. I don't believe in it. I don't think you should either. It doesn't take much to come up with something cool, and your players are going to enjoy dealing with the unknown a lot more than just, oh, it's an orc, it's got 1 hit dice, let's go kill it. So that being said, how do I run my combats? Well, for starters, I try to like determine what exactly the goal of that combat is. Now, if you want to, oh man, like if you do too much of a deep dive, and this is actually where you kind of step into where this book goes, is that every single encounter that you have in a dungeon, whether it is a trap or whether it is a monster or some sort of hazard or whatever, it's all about trying to present the players with some sort of a puzzle or problem that they have to solve. The problem could be truly a puzzle that like you're giving them all the like the hints and what have you that they have to figure out how to get like the pendulum from A to B or whatever. Or the problem could just be a bunch of things that need swords stuck in them so you can get to the next spot. And so, but it's all about teaching the players like if they just walked into a room and the magical artifact was just there in the first room and you opened it up and you took it and you left, and players would be like, okay, what? they wouldn't know how to react to that, right? Players are, because of even if you've never played D&D before, you've been taught with the stories you've read, the movies you watched, the TV shows you've watched, everything like that has taught you about the hero's journey, which is a interesting book by Joseph Campbell, which I suggest people read it because it's an interesting book. Whether or not Joseph Campbell was a good guy or not, that's up to debate. But the point is that the hero's journey is all about like getting from point A to point B, telling the whole story, and being able to determine like the highs and lows and whether or not the reward at the end is justified. And we kind of actually get to that point where it's like, did you deserve to get to that end, and did you have enough trials and tribulations to get through that? And we just kind of learn that. We, like I said, through the media that we consume, we just kind of learn what we expect, right? From those situations, and the players will and the GM for that matter, will notice that it is just kind of, off, right? They'll notice that like, wow, we didn't really deserve this, or that was way too tough for that little of a reward, right? So you will have to teach your players like what to expect, or I guess not teach them, but you will have to give the players what they expect, and it is a tough thing to figure that out and figure out that level and figure out exactly where you're at on that scale. So how I determine or how I run my combats like have to do with expectations, and I will admit, yes, there is some subversion of that expectations every once in a while that is needed, because you want to keep the players on their toes. We have been spoon-fed, fight the ogres, then fight the ogre chieftain, then fight the ogre magi, and then fight the giant king. We've been spoon-fed that incline for so long as people that play D&D and Pathfinder or whatever, that when we alter that up and switch it up, and all of a sudden you find out that, oh wait, no, actually the orc in the first part was like the mastermind of the whole thing, and he just faked his death, and now he's actually this very, very powerful sorcerer lord or something like that. I mean, I'm just spitballing here with ideas, but changing that up keeps players on their toes and makes things interesting. So, but how I run combats is I garner an idea of what kind of how difficult that situation should be, and it has to be difficult enough that it degrades the resources the players have to a certain degree, and makes it a challenging decision whether or not they're going to proceed further into the dungeon, or if they're going to take a step back and regroup and then come back. Now, hard break here. If your players decide to regroup, meaning they are going to take their short rest or whatever, you absolutely, positively have to roll for wandering monsters. I mean, the wandering monster check is something that I think we've forgotten about, and it is something where, even if you roll for wandering monsters and you have a wandering monster table, and and you're going to have the possibility, the fact that the players know in their heads that there is a chance that when they decide to take that short rest, that the door might be kicked down and like a ravenous band of ghouls might run in the door and interrupt what they're doing. If they know that there's that chance, the decision they make is going to be very, very important. And even if you as the DM have decided, I'm not going to have a wandering, even if I roll a 1 and the wandering monsters will show up, I'm not going to have it happen. Just because I want to give the players a break here. I want the story to progress to the next level. I don't want to murder half the party and have them have to restart the whole thing. That being said, if the players leave the dungeon and go and and go camp overnight and come back the next day, you better be sure that they don't just get to basically the quick save in the dungeon and then reboot in the exact same spot. No, repopulate those rooms. And the thing is that you repopulate those rooms, and it sounds cruel and it sounds mean, and you as the DM might be a little bit bored that you've repopulated those rooms with monsters. But the thing is that a couple of times of that happening, your players are going to learn that your style of running a game is that you can't leave the dungeon. If you're going to leave the dungeon, you might as well just leave, go back to your base camp, take a week off, level up, get healed, buy up a bunch of potions or whatever it is that you're going to do, and then come back knowing full well that dungeon's going to be restocked, and go back at it and see what happens. I mean, that's just how... and so the players know that once they're in the dungeon, they're in it to win it, as they say. And if they leave, they're just going to have to start the whole thing over. And I think, like I said, that you just as the players train the DM to give them what they want, like you're going to have players that like combat, you're going to like players that like social intrigue, you're going to have players that like puzzles. They're going to teach you what they like, and then you're going to respond to them with those things that they like. You have to train the players to know what kind of a DM you are, and then so they can react to those situations and use them. Now, all this leading up to finally where we're at. How do I run combats? Well, for starters, what I do is that depending upon the level of the party, the grunts, the people that are going to be killed 1 or 2 shots, I make them about as I take the weakest character of the party, and I decrease their ability just a little bit. So if like the weakest character in the party has like a +3 to hit, those monsters have a +1 or +2 to hit. If the weakest character in the party, like an aggregate of their armor classes between, you know, the meat shields and the wizards, if an aggregate is around 15, 14 armor class, I make those armor classes like 12 or 13 for those people. I just take it a little bit less. I make it a little bit less, and I don't even bother with hit points for them. I don't believe in the whole minions thing with things having 1 hit point or anything like that. What I do is in general, most of my monsters just have a number of hits that I think that they will take. Grunts take 1 hit to drop, unless the player rolls. Well, this is tough. You know, here's the deal. This is going to break a little bit of the verisimilitude of the world or whatever. Players aren't going to care. I mean, it's one of those things where I in a lot of ways, I figure, like, what's a good time for that thing to die? Okay. So, and this is kind of mean. It's like, if I think the combat would be more interesting if that particular goblin managed to stay alive just 1 more round, I'll give him just enough hit points to survive that attack. Unless the player, like, rolled max damage or something. Yeah, fine. You lop the thing's head off and you move on with life. But the player rolls, like, 2 hit points of damage, 3 hit points of damage, and they have a goblin, like, racing full bore to, like, ring the bell to, like, send the alarm off. And so, like, it's going to heighten that tension. Unless, like, the next player up can't shoot an arrow into its back and take it out before it hits the alarm. I'll give him just enough hit points to survive that attack. And that kind of leads into a point that I was going to make a little bit later, but here's the deal. When in doubt, go for the cinematic. There's going to be tons of times that, like, you're going to have really cool things happen in combat just because people are going to have cool things happen. Somebody's going to get a really cool critical hit at the perfect time. Somebody's going to get a really bad critical miss at the worst possible time. And those are going to happen they'll just happen, right? And they won't, and the players will recognize it. Everybody will envision the situation. Everybody will laugh or cheer or curse or what have you, and everybody will enjoy that. But every so once in a while, the person that is running the world, that basically is taking care of everything and making sure that things are progressing forward and are real, sometimes you need to give those things a little bit of a nudge in the direction of where things end up being cool or awesome. And you, as the storyteller, I mean, do you think that, like, George R.R. Martin, when he's writing his stories, like, just says, well, let's just roll a d20 and see who lives through this moment? No. The storyteller, like, creates the world and then says, this would be really cool if this happened. And then it gives it a healthy nudge in that direction. And I firmly believe that the players are entrusting the Dungeon Master to make the cool things happen. Yes, there are, like, things are just going to be created organically that are going to be cool. But I think, like, it takes a what's the word from the one of my favorite Futurama episodes ever, where Bender goes out into space and he becomes, like, they worship those bacteria people worship him as a god, and then he meets some astral being that may or may not be God, who knows, and then they say, if people, if you're doing it right as far as being a god, people won't know whether or not they should believe in you or not. And I think that's a really good, I love that feeling a great deal. But as the players go, if you're doing it right, they won't have any idea that you are actually bending the story to the direction you want it to go. You're giving them the belief, I've talked about this before, the illusion of choice, right? You're giving them the belief that they can do anything in the world, but in reality they really can't. They're still on those railroad lines and they're going in the exact direction you want, but you've got them believing that they actually can change the script, and they really can't. And I think that's like, and the players kind of want to just turn their brain off and not even think about that possibility, just as you want to like be able to make that I don't know, you want to make that world seem like anything is possible when really you know exactly what's going to happen. Now, so getting back to the more nuts and bolts though, the grunts, they are easier to kill, and they're just there to kind of be that line so the players can't just charge the wizard and kill him. The next people are like those elite monsters. Those should be on par with the if there's an archer, they should be on par with the archer in the party. If there is like a big giant bruising fire type, they should be on par with the barbarian in the party. If there is a sneaky type, they should be on par with the rogue, right? You want to have those things like match up and match up well. And then when you get past like the elites, you're getting to like the person that's in charge, the big guy, the big bad evil guy, as they say. Now this doesn't necessarily have to be like the arch nemesis of like the entire like dungeon complex, but there can be sub bosses or whatever. Those should be as powerful, whatever they happen to be, whether they are, if they're a fighter type, they should be tougher than the other fighters. If they are a wizard, they should have access to spells that are more powerful than the wizard. If they're a cleric, they should, same deal, right across the. You should feel like the whole party has to team up and like take them down, and then so when they do take them down, it is a moment of like, yes, like when you take, like, admittedly in Roll20, so you just like kind of remove the icon of the creature, but like when you're playing in person, you reach forward and you touch the miniature and you topple them over to show that they fall. Like the players, like there's that moment where like the players are like, yes, they're like super excited because they've taken down that thing that they've just been beating on forever. Now that's like, and the thing is that ascribes to anything, whether it is like a big giant lumbering forest beast. It doesn't have to be like an actual like NPC class type of thing. And sometimes you'll have amalgamations, like, so if you do have some sort of like lumbering wilderness beast or whatever, that they could have like special attacks like poison and what have you, and also be able to bruise and have tons of hit points and like armor class up the yang. You can combine all those traits into one thing. The point is that like the players have to feel like there is a increase or whatever as far as the difficulty, depending upon the point you're at in the adventure and the expectation of that. And once again, you can change that up a little bit, you can subvert that just a little bit, but make sure that the players are on their toes. And even though their kind of like lizard brain reaction is like, oh, their mind in the back of their head, they're saying this monster should be able to do this, that, or the other thing. They're thinking that. But what is more important is that they've kind of turned that part of their brain off, and it's just kind of feeding them those chemicals of like excitement over that situation. And this is a tough thing to do. It is a tough skill to learn as a dungeon master. It is something that I don't think you can read a book and learn it. I think books can teach you a great deal, but what it is that what you will learn it by doing. And just like anything else in life, the more you do something, the better you're going to get at it. So yeah, there you go. That's really, well, not briefly, but generally that is a good overview of how I run combats, and another like step into the world of how I run my games in general. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed story time. I hope you were able to, maybe if you maybe you learned something, or you're like nodding your head like, yeah, that's what I do too. I mean, if you have stories like that or anything like that about, or tips or anything, please post those. I'd love to hear those comments. As always, if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Hit the little notification button or the bell so you'll get the notification when I post another video. As I said, I'm going to try to do 2 of these a week, or maybe even more if I have the time and the inclination and the ideas. So take care. Until next time, just be the best version of you can possibly be.